Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm so pleased to be joined by Cara Jade Myers, one of the breakout stars of Martin Scorsese's new film, Killers of the Flower Moon, where she plays Anna, the beloved sister of Molly Kyle. It's an amazing performance, an amazing film. I was so excited to speak with you. I spoke with actually Ellen Lewis and Renee Haynes about the casting, and I know it was an incredibly long process, and they specifically said how competitive like all of the sister roles and like Molly and your role and all these different roles were. So I guess like from your vantage point, I mean, how did like what was that process like for you, and like how did it come about that you were able to join this film? I guess.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Well, we started the process in November of 2019, and we started the couple auditions, and then I want to say I went through like 4 or 5 rounds of auditions at November. And then they're like, oh, Scorsese's doing his campaign for The Irishman, so you'll know March 2020.
Great.
Pandemic.
Yeah.
And then, so after the world kind of got a little more organized, we started auditioning again in November, again of 2020. And then I found out December 7th that I booked it. And then we started filming March in 2021.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a while.
When you found out, how did it feel for you? I guess like what was the reaction when you found out?
Oh my God. So I've been a big fan of Renee for a while. Like I've been auditioning for her for years. And so like we've been able to, her and Elise, we've been able to like kind of create this nice little relationship, friendship kind of thing. So my manager is like, oh, can you do a Zoom on Monday at this time? I'm like, yeah, sure. He's like, I just want to go over some more things. I'm like, perfect. And so then he's like, so he starts talking. He's like, oh, I just wanted to say, he pushes a button. Elise and Renee pop on. And then he's like, congratulations. And I just start sobbing. Like they kept talking, but I didn't hear anything after that. I was just like, just crying and nodding my head and smiling. Yeah.
Amazing. It's really great. So when I saw the movie, I was like, Anna comes in and is like, I was like, oh, like you're just a massive movie star, basically. Like it's incredible. Like you just roll in, like stealing the movie, basically. And I was like, it's an incredible performance, and the character's so great. And then I was also thinking, like, obviously, I mean, spoilers here for people who haven't seen or whatever. Obviously, like the fate of Anna and ends up being one of the being murdered. And it's so heartbreaking when we cut back to later in the film when you see how she is murdered. And I was like, you don't have a lot of runway to really create a character that immediately grasps like the audience, and like you're totally, I think all the viewers are like, oh, love this person, love this character. And I guess like, yeah, like how did you think about that and being able to just like, was that a lot on the page, or did you kind of like have, I don't know, was that your intuition or whatever, like just coming in and like kind of really owning the right from the jump, like your first scenes are just like incredible. And I think it really creates a connection with the audience that like allows the movie to land in a lot of ways so emotionally towards the end.
Yeah, no, I definitely it was more of like what I was creating. I know before we even started filming, Anna is an alcoholic, and they very much describe her as like this fun party girl alcoholic. And I have a family history of alcoholism, and I've had family members die from alcoholism. And so I talked to Marty before we even started, and literally the first thing I said is, I don't want her to be just another stereotypical drunk Indian. I want her pain to come from the death of Minnie. And I really want to show that that affected her so much that she has to numb the pain by drinking and by going out so she doesn't think about it. So I very much wanted to give her a grounded reason of why the alcoholism. And so he was all for that. He absolutely loved the idea of, because I was like, well, and Hale's such the villain that I was like, how about we have Hale pass me a flask at Minnie's funeral? And maybe that's kind of the start of how maybe the spiral happened. And so he loved that idea. That was the first scene I filmed, which was pretty awesome. And I'm just sitting there like 2 feet from De Niro and Leo, like, oh my God, how am I here watching them like work with Scorsese? And so it was pretty awesome. And then yeah, a lot of it is just me wanting to show how deeply flawed Anna is, but how much she loves her family. She's just like, that is her core, is her family. And she doesn't always make the right decisions, because addicts, sometimes really don't. But that was my goal, is just to make her some grounded, and just this love, and the fact that all of this wild behavior stems from pain, that I really wanted to show that and kind of give her more of a human aspect, not just like she wants to go have fun.
Right. It's incredible. I mean, I love that note. When De Niro hands her or Hale, De Niro plays Hale, hands her the flat. It's like really is so heartbreaking because it just is like so, and it's like so insidious to like, so much of like what he's doing, right? Like the whole time, and just is like, it's such a great subtle moment. That's so cool that you, you thought that's like really, really cool, I think. And it like is really, yeah, this is really great. I love, yeah, just like what you're like, I guess like you mentioned like that kind of collaboration with Marty. How was that? Like, I mean, like he's like obviously it's Martin Scorsese, so it's like got to be like kind of like you're saying like, oh my god, I can't believe this is Martin Scorsese, but like he is such an artist, and I like in so many interviews I've seen him like of him talking specifically about this film. He obviously spent so much time like thinking about this film and like kind of working on the film and working through the script and all these different things. And I guess like how was that collaboration with you like on a one-on-one basis, I guess? Like how did you find that?
Yeah, it was honestly, it was amazing. The first meeting I had with him, I don't think I worded the question right, but I was just like, how do you want us to play this? Like, because it was more of like, do you want it grounded? Do you want it big? Do you want it, And he looks at me, he's like, you're the actor, figure it out. I'm like, okay. So he's very much like, lets you build this character and lets you build these things. And then, of course, like if you have any questions, he'll talk it out with you. There's times when I would just kind of improv on set, and he'd be like, don't do that, or he'd be like, love it, keep it, what I'm saying. And so like the macaroon where we're all laying down and talking, I meant to take a little bite because I know as an actor you have to do the take so many times, you should take a little bite. It fell apart and I shoved it in my mouth, and then I started talking with my mouth full because I didn't want to like hold up this scene. And he's like, what are you eating? Well, macaroon. He's all, keep doing that. I was like, oh god. So 12 takes later, my stomach is like hurting from eating all these little macaroons.
It's amazing. But I really think that like it's so like that's funny because like again, like you're saying, I think it makes Anna feel so a lot like so real, right? And like you were saying too, like like flawed. She just is such a human character and such a like, yeah, I don't know. I found her so like compelling, and I thought like like just the way you play her is just wonderful. You like, can you talk a little about like being in the community and stuff? Like, I guess how did that help for you, and like how did like kind of like all of that like how did that like help with your research too, I guess, and like kind of like obviously thinking back to like the era, and like I'm sure the people there who were like remember like probably Molly, right? And or like how did that all kind of like help you like work through the character, I guess?
Yeah, well, of course it started with David Graham, like just learning all of the details that the movie doesn't have the time to go into. I'm like, it's 3.5 hour movie, but he crams so much in that 3.5 hours, but there are details that are kind of, that aren't as, I guess, in your face, that it really helped when we were on the Osage land, because they were so incredibly like welcoming, and they wanted to tell us their stories. They wanted to be like, I'm related to Anna, I'm related to Henry, I'm related to, so and so. And we got taken around, like one of John Williams, who was one of the consultants on Killers. He was absolutely amazing. He actually took me out to where Anna was murdered and where Henry Rowan was murdered. And it's crazy because there's so many, like, it's there, it's in the land, you can feel it, you can still feel it in the people. There's so many. One of my friends, Ed Shaw, he told me, he's like, I remember my dad took me to this place in Fairfax, he pointed it out, and he's like, he remembered seeing Ernest playing poker there, and his dad introduced him, or he just saw him. And so it's like, it's crazy how much you can still feel it affecting. Like, I think if you're kind of oblivious to the history, then you don't maybe not notice it. But once you know it and you start seeing the details, you start seeing these people are like, oh, I own Osage head rights that aren't native. And you're like, oh, kind of thing. And then also it's just the way that they act, the way they treat the land, the way that everything is in their society, you can still see the aftermath of it. Like, even I had someone reach out to me recently who took her daughter, 15-year-old daughter, to watch Killers. And Henry Rowan, when he gets killed, she leans over to her mom and says, is that my great grandpa? And she's like, yeah.
Wow.
So I know that that as much as it's entertainment to everyone else, this is such a real story for them, and it is very emotional. It can be triggering, but also it's something that has been hidden for so long that it needs to be talked about, because I mean, there's so many people who even live in Oklahoma who have no idea that this was happening.
Right. I mean, it's like, and the thing that's for me, it's like you were just saying there, like it's like recent it's only 100 years. It's like not that long ago, right? Like people have connections to this. It's not like we're talking about ancient history, right? It's like very recent in the
Yeah.
grand scheme of things, really. And it's like kind of just shocking that it's a story that really hasn't been, like you said, like people maybe even in Oklahoma don't know or is not as widely told. And like that's something you mentioned, like people seeing it. Like, have you, like, what was your like thought when you saw the finished film? Like, what was, I'm sure it was obviously incredibly overwhelming, but like, what was like, what were your thoughts about it? And like, how did you feel like the story kind of came together, I guess?
Yeah, it's funny. The first time I saw it was at Cannes. And I think it's just such like a big moment with all these people. And like it's like the big carpet before, and uh my heel was breaking as I was walking the carpet. So I'm holding on to De Niro for dear life. So it's just like all these things. So I sat down and I watched it. And on my first viewing, I feel like it was just me taking everything in. Like there's so much to process. There's so much to see. There's so many little nuances that I missed the first time I watched it. Like I've seen it like 6 times already because all my friends want to go like see it with me. And like every time I watch it, there's something more I notice, or there's like a deeper meaning and stuff. So for me, it's just it's I'm loving it. I'm excited that this story is getting told because I feel like the Osage deserve their story to be told. It's, this is an extremely unique story, but it's not singular because there's so many other tribes who have experienced something like this, or it's some kind of genocide or some kind of just erasure of culture.
Yeah. I've only seen it 3 times. So you've got me there, but I agree because it's like, I love the movie because I think there is so much detail with it. And it's always like the thing I love about Martin Scorsese movies is that it really, he gives you something to think about and isn't like kind of holding the audience's hand ever. So it's like you're always kind of like turning over like things that are he's showing or just in general. And I feel like that gives it like a real like long tail afterwards where I could like still like just think about or like talking about other people. You know what I mean? It's like really, it's just an incredible piece of work. You wrote, I think you wrote it was maybe for Backstage. I read it, you wrote a really like nice, really moving first person piece, and you talked about how when you were a child you went to movies for an escape. And this is not necessarily a question, but I was like, it reminded me of Scorsese actually too, because his like origin is that he had a severe asthma growing up, and like he watched movies and like kind of like that's how he got into it. And I guess the question would be like, did you felt like, did you connect with that at all, like that aspect of like using movies as an escape as a childhood, especially like in traumatic situations or something like that? Or was it just like kind of like, I don't know, I just like I found that really fascinating that you kind of had that a similar in term like sort of connection there with him. And I just was wondering if that ever came up or whatever. I don't know, I like that.
Yeah. No, it never necessarily came up. I mean, we did talk about his asthma because I saw a tattoo that said it ain't easy being wheezy. And so he thought that was funny.
That's good.
But yeah, it's interesting because he did take such care and such detail. And it's just he's just like a master, like
Yeah,
he does everything so well that you see these small little details that you never notice. And was it just me, or was the second viewing Hale was like more nervous, more like evil and insidious?
very much so. It's incredibly like very like it's like poison, like steeping into like literally like poison, right? I mean, like he is like, it's just a really incredible like evil performance from De Niro. He's really
Yeah.
something else in it. It's like it's just so good. You another person, one actor I wanted to ask you about too is Tantu Cardinal, who plays Anna's mom, and you have a couple amazing scene with her. Right, I just think she's so great in the film also. And I guess like she's obviously got a very long incredible career before this. I guess like how is it like working with her, and like kind of, like what did you take away from like her as a performer, I guess?
Yeah, she's amazing. That look she gives Leo when you first see her, oh my God. I like, because I know her, I just like cracked up, at it, because you're just like, oh, I never wanted to see that look from Tantu. But yeah, she's such a legend. And like her face and eyes are just so expressive that like she doesn't have to say a word and you already know. But yeah, definitely that scene with her on the bed is one of my favorite scenes. I really wanted to take advantage of the fact that it was a softer moment, and we see Anna so upbeat and hard all the time that I wanted to really take that one beat to show like, no, she's loves her family so much, she loves her mom so much, she has this sweetness to her, but she's dealing with these evil men, so she's always constantly on guard, and she's constantly just drowning her sorrow. So it was very much like, and Tantu has had this career that has spanned it, I think she said 50 years, the 70s. Yeah, 50 years. Holy moly. But she's gone through just so much adversity. She's gone through so much stereotyping, so much inaccurate representation that she's had to fight to make accurate, that she's just such a legend, and she really paved the way for us. So for me, I have so much respect for her. I absolutely loved working with her. I hope I get to do it again. And she's hilarious, to be honest. She says the craziest things, and you're just like, Tantu.
I mean, you're right about that look. It's not even like, it's not, the movie's not funny, but it's like, if there's something, but she just looks at him like, you're just bad news, right? Like immediately has him pegged. Like, if you know, and this is, like I mentioned before, like when we see Anna's murder, I just like, it's like, honestly, like, it took my breath away. Like I said, I've seen it like 3 times. It's just so upsetting. And so not like a light question perhaps, but I mean, like for you, like having to go through that, I mean, and if this is something you don't want to discuss or whatever, that's fine. But I mean, to go through that trauma, I guess, what was that like as an actor? And like, kind of, yeah, like how do you do that, for lack of a better? It's just such an incredibly, just a very upsetting sequence, obviously. And I think the way your performance in that is like it's like so full of life right up, and like, you know what I mean, like just, and then just immediately, and the fact that they don't care, it's just like very upsetting. The whole thing is very upsetting. So I guess like for you as a performer, like, yeah, like how did you think about that? And like kind of like how did you guys talk about that sequence? Obviously such a, I'm sure handled with like a lot of respect because of like what you're doing, but like, yeah, like how did you kind of go about that?
Yeah, it was definitely one of the scenes I was worried about, because like I said, this story is so personal to the Osage, and their relatives are watching this. Their granddaughters, their great granddaughters. That was definitely a concern of mine, but I know how important it was to show, I guess, these deaths that are very sudden and sometimes very brutal, but then they just walk away. They're discarded, and Marty will just linger on that to show that they just didn't care. And I think that was such a important and masterful way to depict that. For me, it wasn't as hard for me on set, because like for me, I wanted her to have life. I didn't want her to see this necessarily coming, even though she, at the end, she's like, you're gonna kill me. She's like fighting till the end kind of thing. Right. So for me, it wasn't as hard. It was interesting because the day that I filmed it later in the day, and in the morning was the scenes where they were pulling the body and like, deconstructing it, I guess is the best way to put it. So they were filming that all morning. And so when I walked on set to film the other scene, it was such like a vibe that you could tell, like people were just like heartbroken, and like people would literally walk by me and just kind of like touch my shoulder or like something, because like they were like, they're literally watching these people saw into my head, because the form is so incredibly detailed. Like Janae, one of this who plays Rita, she said that like you can see pores, like it's so detailed. And so it's just like, yeah, so it's like they were going through that all morning. And as I was walking on, you see the corners and they're shaking blood off their hands, like cleaning it, the actors are cleaning it off from the scene. I walked by, he's like, sorry. But it was very much like you could feel the levity of it, like when you walked on set. Like, so I think it definitely set the tone for like, okay, like this is something that it needs to be treated with care and responsibility, and just to show the brutalness of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly powerful film, and your performance, like I said, is just a remarkable performance. Cara Jade Myers, who plays Anna in Killers of the Flower Moon. It's in theaters now, and it'll be on Apple TV Plus as well. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.